In 1991, communist Albania collapsed. 6 years later, pyramid scheme riots triggered civil war, and 40% of the country's military arsenal was looted from unguarded depots, arming a generation with nothing left to lose. What followed was a wave of extreme violence that carried Albanian gangs from the ruins of the Balkans to the summit of Europe's cocaine trade, bound by an ancient blood code that most investigators still cannot crack. The collapse of Albania's communist regime in 1991 left a country stripped of order. The Ministry of Internal Affairs dissolved almost overnight, and with it, the last line of defense against chaos vanished. Police stations emptied, border posts stood abandoned, and the black market became the only authority. As law evaporated, smuggling routes sprang up across the mountains and Adriatic coast, moving fuel, cigarettes, and anything else of value through improvised corridors. These early networks would later become the arteries of Europe's drug trade. By 1997, the situation reached its breaking point. Pyramid schemes, promising impossible returns, collapsed, wiping out the savings of half the adult population. Fury spilled into the streets. Rioters stormed military depots, seizing whatever weapons they could find. In a matter of weeks, an estimated 40% of Albania's entire arsenal disappeared. AK-47s, RPGs, and crates of ammunition changed hands in broad daylight. The state lost control of its firepower, and the streets filled with armed men who had nothing left to lose. The scale of the looting was staggering. Reports from Vlorë and Shkodër described convoys of trucks hauling away weapons by the ton. Border controls were meaningless. Guns and ammunition flowed out of Albania into Kosovo, Italy, and beyond. The sudden abundance of military hardware transformed street gangs into armed militias. Clan-based groups, some rooted in old northern bloodlines, began to enforce their own order. Their muscle came not just from numbers, but from the firepower they now wielded. What started as local survival quickly evolved into a new kind of criminal organization, one that would soon export its violence and discipline far beyond Albania's borders. As the Kosovo War sent shockwaves through the Balkans, a surge of refugees crossed into Western Europe. Between 1998 and 1999 alone, around 200,000 Albanian asylum claims were lodged across the UK, Italy, Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, and Scandinavia. These newcomers often landed in already established diaspora enclaves, places like Barking in London, Verona in Milan, and Deurne in Antwerp, where old clan ties offered shelter and a foothold in unfamiliar cities. In these pockets, the rules of the homeland followed. The Kanon, a centuries-old Albanian code, became the backbone of order. Article 5, known as Besa, demanded an oath of absolute loyalty, a promise to protect the group's interests at any personal risk. Article 22, the law of blood feud, set the terms for revenge and retribution. These traditions, rooted in the mountains, were now enforced in city apartments and back-alley cafes. Clan hierarchy remained strict. A patriarch, or kriatar, presided over family councils and directed operations. Lieutenants managed cells, while foot soldiers handled street-level business. Every member was bound by blood or marriage, making infiltration nearly impossible. Before handling money or weapons, new recruits swore their bise, often on a family heirloom, sealing their loyalty with a ritual that outsiders could neither understand nor break. This transplanted structure gave the Albanian gangs a resilience that baffled police. Witnesses who considered testifying were threatened with blood feuds that could reach families back home. The code of silence held fast, even under pressure. With each generation, the diaspora's criminal networks grew more sophisticated, using old-world loyalty to build a new kind of power, one that could survive raids, betrayals, and the constant churn of migration. Wholesale cocaine prices in Europe once hovered around 22,000 euros per kilo. That changed when Albanian brokers began negotiating directly with Colombian and Ecuadorian cartels. The old system relied on Italian middlemen, especially the 'Ndrangheta, who took a heavy cut at every stage. By 2015, a new generation of Albanian fixers, including Ervis Qila, started meeting cartel envoys in places like Dubai's Gold Souk. These deals slashed the price per kilo to as low as €4,800. Suddenly, the cost of entry for street-level dealers across Europe dropped by nearly 80%. The effect was immediate. More cocaine, cheaper, flooding cities from Antwerp to London. The 'Ndrangheta didn't fight this change, they adapted. Italian clans kept their grip on southern ports and distribution, but Albanians controlled the supply. The two sides struck a pact. Albanians would handle procurement and logistics, Italians would manage territory and retail. Operation Pollino in 2018 exposed the depth of this alliance, with coordinated raids netting over 3,000 kilos of cocaine and dozens of arrests across Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands. The economic logic was simple. Whoever could move product cheaper, faster, and in greater volume would dominate the market. Brute force still mattered, but now the real power came from controlling the supply chain. For the Albanian clans, this was the engine behind their expansion and the fuel for the violence that followed. Gunfire in broad daylight, grenade blasts in crowded nightclubs. The reign of Albanian gangs across Europe is enforced not by whispers or coded threats, but by violence carried out in the open, meant to leave a scar on the streets and a warning in the minds of anyone watching. Between 2016 and 2022, police in London, Milan, Antwerp, and Brussels logged a wave of attacks. Machine gun assaults on rival safe houses, nightclub bombings, contract killings in broad daylight. In Barking, East London, 3 died and 8 were wounded when a rival clan's apartment was sprayed with bullets. In Milan's Corvetto district, a grenade exploded in a crowded club, killing 2 and injuring a dozen more. Antwerp's Deurne neighbourhood saw a silenced pistol used to settle a €1 million dispute. Even in Brussels, a senior clan member was executed in a public square. The motive traced back to a marriage feud and the Kanun's law of blood revenge. These attacks are not random outbursts. They are calculated acts of terror designed to keep neighbourhoods in fear and rivals in check. The weapons, AK-47, grenades, military pistols, often trace back to the looted arsenals of 1997, a direct line from Albania's collapse to the arsenal of today's gangs. Roving cells move between safe houses in Antwerp, Rotterdam, London, and Milan, striking with military precision and then vanishing into the diaspora's shadows. The message is clear. Loyalty is rewarded, betrayal is fatal, and silence is enforced not just by threats, but by the memory of what happens to those who cross the line. This climate of fear is the real currency, one that buys silence, obedience, and a reputation that law enforcement struggles to penetrate. Inside Europe's busiest ports, Albanian gangs turned bribery into a science. In Rotterdam and Antwerp, dock workers and customs officials received cash, anywhere from €5,000 to €30,000 per container, to look the other way as cocaine slipped through in shipments of bananas, frozen fish, or coffee beans. The 2020 seizure of 2,300 kilograms aboard the MV Atlantic Star exposed just one corridor in a sprawling network. But muscle alone didn't keep these routes open. Encrypted platforms like EncroChat and Sky ECC became the gang's digital backbone, allowing them to coordinate bribes, container swaps, and even retaliation hits with a few coded messages. When European police cracked these services, investigators uncovered over 1.5 million messages, evidence of a logistics machine running beneath the surface of legitimate trade. The ports became invisible battlegrounds where loyalty could be bought, silence enforced, and trust lived on a screen as much as in blood. On the streets of Barking, a new kind of power went viral. Albanians, led by the elusive TS, turned their crew into an online sensation. By 2020, their YouTube channel counted over 500,000 followers, more than some UK drill stars. Their videos were a parade of designer tracksuits, stacks of cash, and Kalashnikovs laid out like trophies. Instead of hiding in the shadows, Albanians flaunted their reach, luxury cars, gang signs, and coded threats blasted across Instagram and Snapchat. The message was clear: wealth and violence, broadcast for all to see. The old mafia code of silence collided with a digital age where recruitment happened through DMs and reputation was built on likes and shares. For young recruits, the promise wasn't just money, but fame. For rivals, it was a warning. This new breed didn't care who was watching. On August 14, 2024, federal agents in New York intercepted a tractor-trailer packed with 163 kilograms of cocaine, its destination hidden beneath layers of paperwork and false cargo. The indictment named Albanian suspects at the heart of the operation, describing a supply chain that ran straight from Colombian cartels to the streets of the Bronx. In a rare public warning, DEA Special Agent Karen Mitchell stated, "Albanian syndicates are no longer just European distributors, they are carving out a permanent beachhead in the United States." The decentralized clan-based structure that shielded these groups in Europe now frustrates American investigators. For law enforcement, the threat is no longer contained to European ports or city blocks. It is a moving target, adapting and spreading with no sign of retreat. Albanian gangs don't fade, they adapt. As encrypted apps vanish and borders tighten, their networks splinter, mutate, and reappear where least expected. Violence isn't a relic, it's currency, traded daily on Europe's streets. The real fear isn't what's known, but what remains hidden in the shadows ahead.